So let's start off with a piece of news that is Baylor-related, although this might be kind of the last Baylor-related thing we talk about with this young man, but Gerry Bohanon, former Baylor quarterback now, of course, the starter last year, and then gets hurt. Blake Shapen comes in, takes over, leads into a Big 12 title, and Gerry comes back and is the quarterback for the Sugar Bowl. And, got his big opportunity last year to be the starter at the beginning of the year after winning that quarterback competition. And less than a year later, this is the world of college football. He is in the transfer portal after the spring practices were over, and Dave Aranda commenced to name a starter in Blake Shapen, or at least reports came out that Blake Shapen was the starter, and then subsequently Gerry Bohanon enters the transfer portal. Well, Grayson, a couple weeks later, we finally know his destination, and Gerry Bohanon's going to continue his college career at the University of South Florida, joining up with the Bulls out in Tampa. He let that be known over the weekend with a graphic on Instagram. So, we're not going to, clearly follow his South Florida career all that much and talk too much about it because it's a different conference. It's a different everything, really. And I'm certainly going to track Gerry and see how he does. But, your thoughts on just, him finding a destination and it being USF.
Yeah, it's college football for you, isn't it? Because he's ending up at USF. The loser of the quarterback battle last year, Jacob Zeno, is likely going to start at UAB. So you got two guys that are going to be playing and starting at another school after losing the quarterback competition at Baylor. I think that kind of speaks to the depth that Baylor had developed in that quarterback room and kind of the quality that they had in the room as well. Now, as far as Gerry going to USF, I think this is a great landing spot for him. I know there were reports that he took a visit to Oklahoma and they took a visit to Missouri as well, but he ends up at the group of 5 level. And to me, this is a clear sign of, I want to go somewhere and I want to be the guy. And he goes to USF, he is going to be the guy. There's no doubt about it. If you look at the quarterbacks on the roster at USF, they were really bad a year ago. This team went 2-10. Their starting quarterback, Timmy McClain, 1,888 yards, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, only completed 55% of his passes. He was not good at all for them a year ago. Their backups didn't fare any better. So now Gerry's going to come in there, and I think what Gerry's going to bring for them is kind of a better ability completion percentage wise. He's going to be more accurate than the quarterbacks on the roster. He's going to be a better athlete than the quarterbacks on the roster as well. And I think this is a great opportunity for an offense to really open him up a little bit more and allow him to be more of a factor in the run game, especially the power run game. They're going to rely on him a lot. They have a really good wide receiver returning as well at USF. So I think things are kind of aligning for Gerry to really be set loose in that offense. Now, does that mean they're going to win a ton of games? Probably not. But I do think for Gerry, I think it's going to allow him to really grow as a quarterback and develop as more than a game manager, which is what he was at Baylor.
Yeah, he'll definitely be their focal point, I would imagine. And, it is funny to me, and this is no disrespect to Gerry, but it's just, and I'm sure Baylor fans or Baylor media have been guilty of it with certain guys as well. But just the excitement level, USF, I'm glad that they're excited for it, but I see some of these reporters make comments about his game, and I'm like, did you watch any of him? It's like, this is massive, and I'm like, well, it's pretty big, I guess, but it's not like, Peyton Manning's walking through the door or anything like that. It's kind of crazy to me, and I think that's why the transfer portal gets people so excited, is that they just get so excited about just adding a guy that it's funny and it's great. It's great that the transfer portal creates all that excitement, but I think they need to temper expectations already a little bit down there. No disrespect, because some of the responses I saw, he's good. I think he'll thrive down there, but he does have some things to work on. He is not a polished product by any means, but I'm not saying that to take away from Gerry at all. It's just interesting when you've been living in this world with Gerry for the last 4 years and seeing what people say, and then you see another fan base get him, and then you see the way that they talk about him, and it's just interesting to see the differences.
I will say, from a look at what you have on the roster perspective compared to Gerry, I can see why they're thrilled, because it's just, he's so much better than what they have on their roster. So I understand that perspective. I just think it's super interesting that when he entered the portal, everyone was talking about, Missouri, D1, Power 5. He's going to go and be a no question starter somewhere. And, this is the portal. That sometimes does not happen. And honestly, most times that does not happen. Even though he has a full year of production, he's ending up on a 2-10 team. That's just kind of how it works out sometimes. But the thing of it is I think he's going to do some great things there. I think he's going to help elevate that program over the next 2 years, because I do think he'll be in college for 2 more years. And he'll give them some reliability and leadership there. So I'm happy for him. Tampa's a really cool place to be as well. So he's going to have a lot of fun there, I think, and be able to really thrive down at USF. So I'm happy for Gerry. I think he's going to do some great things. But overall, I think at this point, it's just one of those things where you go, this is why Blake Shapen won the job. Like, Blake Shapen was just a better quarterback, and now we can all sit back and cheer for he and Jacob Zeno at their 2 landing spots.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see there's excitement for him. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that there's some buzz now for Gerry, and he's going to a place where it looks like he's going to be appreciated. And I think he was here too, but I think that they're buzzing to have him come down to Tampa. So that's good for Gerry Bohanon, and we'll see where it takes him and all of that. But he's going to need some help, that's for sure. And like you mentioned, they apparently have a pretty good wide receiver, but that's been a program that's been kind of hobbling along the last few years, and they could certainly use some juice from him and some of that standard that he brought and things like that. So all best wishes to Gerry Bohanon as he's now found his next destination, and he's got a couple years of eligibility left.
2.
Yeah. So he's got an opportunity to really kind of settle in there and make his mark. And I'd love nothing more than to see him, going in the NFL draft in a couple years, getting picked up. But obviously a lot of work still to do there before that happens.